freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great, wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many areas of our lives and is responsible for so many of the problems that we have these days. And if you want to give us a call and join the conversation, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. If you have a question you want to ask, if you have a story you'd like to share, if you have heard something on the program that interests you, or found something in the news, or have a personal experience that you want to ask a question about, please feel free to give us a call at 718-717-8296. Happy to take your call. Well, I am pretty well out of gas this weekend. I'll tell you why. I was in 3 different cities doing workshops this past week, and got in very late, later than I planned, and tried to do a little bit of recouping yesterday. That really wasn't all that possible. So I'm still got a bit of jet lag, shall we say, and I got to tell you, folks, airline travel, I'm sure many of you who travel frequently, or even if you don't travel all that frequently, you know that going by air these days is not the experience that it once was. It used to be a fairly pleasant experience. You could get from place to place very quickly. You had good service. You were entertained most of the time. You had at least a snack, and I remember the days when you had a full meal. And these days, the seats are smaller. You're crammed into a smaller plane many times, and there are upcharges for just about everything. Boy, that is really annoying. I will not mention the airline that I traveled on this time, because I don't book I don't book the air travel, nor do I book my accommodations. The company that coordinates my speaking tour does that for me, but I'm going to be giving them feedback about this airline. To add insult to injury, on top of the relatively poor service, The first thing that happens to you when you get to the kiosk and try and get your boarding pass is that they want to know if they can get some extra money from you for just about anything to make the ride more pleasant. If you don't want to board last, that'll cost you another $15. If you want to board second to last, that'll cost you even more. If you want to board first, that'll cost you even more. If you want a decent seat, that'll cost you even more. If you want an extra bag, that'll cost you even more than the bag you're already paying for. It's to the point of real absurdity. And you have to either accept or decline at every stage of the way before you get your pass. They make it as unpleasant and as cumbersome as possible, and it's just not any fun. Then to top matters off, with delays, as they so frequently happen, and with baggage mishandling and whatnot, and also this ridiculous system that we have now for major hubs, good direct service to those major hubs, but then from those hubs to connecting cities, very poor service and very limited scheduling. So, you get to the hub, you may have a layover that's substantial, or you have such a tight window to make a connecting flight that you miss it. At any rate, as the case may be, I figured it out. By the time I got home, after waiting ad nauseum for my bags, and after being late to start with, by the time I got home and looked at the clock, nearly 1 o'clock in the morning, I realized that had I jumped in my car in my last location and headed home, I would have arrived right about the same time. So one begins to wonder what the advantage is these days of flying. I'm sure several of you have had that experience. And I don't know how directly it relates to the character issue, other than the fact that everybody is about streamlining and making money and really making people comfortable in serving people's needs is not high on the agenda at any of these places. As a matter of fact, you pay extra for just about every bit of comfort that you get, and even that is minimal. So, although I really did enjoy giving my presentations, and I enjoyed the interchange with the audiences, I think the attendees at the workshops, at least I hope they did, got something out of them, and I certainly hope. The reason I'm doing these workshops, by the way, is because I think I have it within me to do a last round of professional training so that professionals out there who are increasingly on the front line of dealing with character disturbance of one type or another can provide the kind of counsel that not only truly assists those individuals who are in relationships with dysfunctional characters, but also provides an opportunity for those with character impairments who have the motivation and have the desire to grow and to become better folks, that they'll have now some tools. These clinicians whom I spoke to, they'll have some tools to actually make a difference. So that's why I'm doing these workshops. And I've got some others coming up here in just 3 weeks in Columbus, Ohio, in Indianapolis, and in Cincinnati. So I'm looking forward to them. I'll have more details on the next program. But you can also go to my blog at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. or my website, drgeorgesimon.com. That's drgeorgesimon.com, and you'll be redirected to the blog site. And on my blog, on the seminars page, is a calendar of the upcoming workshops and some information. You could also go to the Cross Country Education website to get the information. And all you have to do when you get to the Cross Country Education seminars website is to search by name, Dr. George Simon, by presenter, and the schedule of workshops will come up. So you can find information there, but I have more information for you next week. And as I said, if you have a question you want to ask, a story you'd like to share, maybe some insights that you've gained and that you want to discuss, either by visiting the blog, reading several of the articles there, reading either of my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller on how to deal with those folks that make you crazy. Also, Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age, my in-depth look at all the disturbed characters out there and what makes them tick and what kind of intervention is necessary to make things better when you go looking for help. And then lastly, the Judas Syndrome, my book for the Christian faith community about how genuine faith can truly save, can truly transform a life and elevate us to a higher level of functioning. And so, like I said, if you want to give us a call, have any of those things you'd like to talk about, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I mentioned the Judas Syndrome just moments ago. It was a very interesting and unusual circumstance, this series of workshops. I always have books to vend with me, and I almost never, because these professional trainings are geared toward a particular audience, so I kind of expect that the Judas Syndrome is not going to be the hottest commodity on these. But interestingly enough, on this tour, the very first day, the very first workshop, all those copies that I had with me were purchased. So I didn't have any, couldn't get any more for the rest of the tour. That's a very unusual circumstance. But that does touch my heart a bit, because that book means a lot to me, because it speaks to people of faith about the real practical and powerful power of faith to really transform a person's life. So it does my heart good that I was able to get the message out there, basically. I also I want to apologize to the blog readers. This is a week where, for the first time in almost 4 years, there hasn't been a regular Friday post of a new article, and that is because I wasn't around to fashion one. I was traveling. Well, for most of the day on Friday, I was teaching, and then, of course, traveling the rest of the day. I want to tell you, on these workshops, the schedule is so tight that you don't have time. You rise early to set up and check folks in, a morning session, a small break, a very small break for lunch, an afternoon session. Then it's time to process everything, pack up, get to the new destination, maybe have a little dinner before retiring, and then get up early in the morning and start again in a fresh location. I want to say it's a pretty grueling kind of deal, but I really do enjoy speaking to other professionals and helping spread the word basically about what we can do about the phenomenon of our time. When I was dealing with all these individuals who are on the front lines of our character crisis, they are counselors, social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, nurses, etc., who for one reason or another are coming in contact with more and more folks these days who have significant character disturbances. This is the phenomenon of our time. And it's because of the socio-cultural atmosphere that we have, one of entitlement and permissiveness, and it fosters a fair degree of character immaturity. Folks, kind of get a clue as to what socially responsible functioning is all about. These days, many times, not until middle age, not until the third or fourth marriage, and not until the fourth or fifth regroup of their lives, and perhaps even their fourth or fifth career, and then they finally get it, and then they're ready to take on the kinds of responsibilities that in years past folks were mature enough to do in their early 20s. So it's a new time, it's a new cultural atmosphere, and we're having some problems because of it. Mainly a lot of character immaturity that causes a lot of dysfunction in our working relationships, in our intimate relationships, especially in our marriages, which are the bedrock, which is the bedrock institution of our communities, and without solid families, intact families, healthy families, without them, we don't have healthy communities, and without healthy communities, we don't have a great country. And as the theme song that plays at the beginning, at the end of this program, tries to convey, our greatness in this land has never depended upon our military might or our economic power. Our greatness has always been determined by the character of our people who take our ideals and our professed values seriously and live up to them. They honor them. They honor and cherish our best ideals and live them out. And it's upon these folks that take up the daily weight of individual responsibility and have sound internal moral compasses. It's on the backs of these folks that great countries are built. And it's also on these folks that the very survival of freedom depends, as I've said many times, because in the absence of good, solid character, and in the absence of mass dysfunction, government, the only way that they can attempt to kind of control the situation is through passing legislation that essentially restricts the freedoms of people. If people have and live by their own solid internal moral compass, then they don't need anybody telling them what to do. You can give them maximum freedom. That's the way the country was founded. The principle being that limited government intrusion into the lives of everyday folks would create a powerfully innovative, free, prosperous society. And the framers knew right from the get-go that all of that depended upon whether or not the populace was of sound character. So one of the problems we're having today is we have a rule for just about everything. As a matter of fact, I realized this is an interesting little side. I'm on the plane, and for the first time, because I've got nothing else I'm doing, I actually listened fairly carefully to the opening dialogue, that the little blurb that the flight attendants are required to say for safety reasons at the beginning of the flight. And to show you how many rules that we have, and to show you how easy it is for us to inadvertently violate one of those rules because we have so many of them, and the ridiculousness of that. I was listening as the flight attendant announced that it is a federal regulation that you read the safety card as you get on every plane. Now, I don't know about you folks, but I didn't see anybody grabbing their card and reading it, and I didn't read mine either. So technically speaking, I'm in violation of federal law because I didn't read from front to back the safety card. I did listen to the announcement about emergency exits and whatnot, but I didn't read that card from front to back. As a matter of fact, when I when I looked for the card, there was none in my pocket, the seat pocket in front of me. I could see that there might have been one in the neighboring seat, but the person occupying that seat must have been at least 150 pounds overweight. So it was very, very hard to maneuver. It was actually hard to even sit and breathe. And we had a packed flight, and there was no way to exchange seats or whatever. And I would only have been exchanging some discomfort for somebody else. So I wasn't going to reach into the other pocket for this thing. But to make a long story short, we have all these rules. And, you know, the fact is that we can make all the rules we want. Those who are dysfunctional among us, they don't pay attention to them. The only people who take these things very, very seriously are the ultra conscientious among us who really try to make this whole thing work. And not one of these individuals, not one of the conscientious out there, not one of you with a really intact conscience who really cares, not one of you does what you do or observes the rules and the limits that you do because there's a law out there governing your behavior. Not one of you responsible folks refrains from doing some horrible thing to the neighbor you're angry with, or refrains from drinking to excess and then driving, et cetera, because either there's a law against it or because of the fear of punishment for it. Most of you, most conscientious folks that I know, observe these principles of behavior because they know it's the right thing, and they want to be socially responsible individuals. So our freedom is always in jeopardy, and what we really need to do to ensure this country's greatness again is to make sure that we address this problem that we've had for about 5 generations now. This problem of declining character standards. And we have to look at those aspects of our culture that both encourage and then reward dysfunctional behavior. And I was really struck by this. By the way, let me interrupt here and say once again that if you have a question you want to ask or a comment you want to make, a story you want to share, you can give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Happy to take your call. But to make a long story short, one of the locations that I was giving a workshop was Des Moines, Iowa. And as you know, the Iowa caucuses are about to begin, and there's a lot of buzz in the area about the caucuses and all of the pre-caucus activity that's going on. And I have to say, I've been watching ads on television, and I watched the last debate, especially the last Democratic debate. And it's really disconcerting to me. It's really disconcerting to see the kinds of manipulation. As you know, that's my field of expertise, and that's what I was giving training on. To see such outright manipulation going on so constantly, especially when the truth and fairness and straightforward talk would do just fine. You know, we are not idiots. The general voting public is not, by and large, made up of fools. We folks who take these things seriously, who take our responsibility to vote seriously, and who take our other civic duties seriously, we have a fair degree of conscientiousness about us, and we're not ignorant of things. And so when these politicians use their tactics, it just gets under my skin because in our time, it's really unnecessary. They will excuse it. The folks who do these things, they will excuse it because, after all, if they don't win, then they can't push forward their agenda. So their thinking is that they've got to win and win at all costs. And so they and their handlers come up with all these strategies to enhance their chances of winning. And a lot of it is very manipulative. And I saw this on display. I made a point when I was teaching one of the workshops, and someone was asking for an explanation of all the various types of lying. I was pointing out that manipulators don't just lie. Manipulators lie with a great deal of art. They lie in some very subtle, underhanded ways, and it's hard to tell that they're lying many times, especially if they use what I call the most insidious technique, which is lying by saying nothing but true things. Now, at first, when you think about that, that sounds like an oxymoron. That sounds like a contradiction in terms. It sounds like a paradox. Well, it's not. A person can lie by saying nothing but a series of absolutely, factually correct things. Now, how can that be, you ask? Well, I'll give you an example. There is this debate going between the two the two top Democratic candidates, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And the debate has to do with universal health care. Now, as you know, the president, Barack Obama, he believed that the system that we have for private insurance is unhealthy, basically, for the country, and unfair and also immoral, because it leaves too many people without coverage, folks who are then forced to go to the ER or perhaps even are denied services. So knowing that he could not successfully push through a single-payer government-sponsored insurance program, or not insurance program, excuse me, health care program, knowing that he could not do that, he confided to a group of labor folks that a foot in the door would be gotten by this plan that we have now, affectionately referred to as Obamacare by some, not so affectionately. It involved basically letting insurance companies, private insurers, bid for contracts to provide services, but they had to meet certain standards in so doing. In other words, they could divvy up the pool of insureds, but they had to do a few things that they weren't routinely doing before, like guaranteeing certain kinds of coverage, and also covering pre-existing illnesses. That was a biggie, because when someone lost their job before through an employer and then went to another company and became insured, there was this, first of all, exclusionary period, and then an even longer exclusionary period that could even be during the lifetime of the contract, an exclusion for any illness that was pre-existing. So that was done away with. And by the time all of the requirements were put on, these companies are all determined to make money. You see, they're for profit. So long as the profit is in health care reimbursement, so long as there is insurance as opposed to health care, there's always going to be some problems. So to make a long story short, these insurers obeyed all the mandates, and then they set their rates with so-called competition among one another, not much. And even though the government promised that the mandates would not so challenge profits that it would drive rates through the roof. As a matter of fact, the administration promised that costs would come down, and they would cover more people. Their estimate was some 30 million people uninsured. In fact, they covered about 14 million people who were uninsured. So a lot of misrepresentation on both ends. But my point is the end result was this system that we have now, in which deductibles are outrageous compared to the way they used to be, and reimbursement rates are worse, and the co-pays have escalated beyond belief. In many cases, the deductibles are so high that you could go through the entire year Uh, you can go through the entire year with health care charges and never meet your deductible. Everything would be out of your pocket. And this used to be the case only for people who were paying for catastrophic coverage only. So recognizing that this turned out to be kind of a disaster, and still believing that the only real solution is to take the profit out of healthcare reimbursement, not healthcare as a business, because that's driven an awful lot of excellence. We still have some pretty good healthcare in this country. And if we took the profit entirely out of it, there are a lot of folks who are concerned that lower skilled individuals are getting the same reimbursement rate as very skilled individuals would change the nature of the marketplace, the health marketplace, dramatically. There wouldn't be incentive. There wouldn't be as much incentive for folks to put in the time to hone down the education that they need to do a really good job in providing the health care. So, to make a long story short, in this debate, the issue came down to, do we have this single-payer system, finally, with the profit taken out, or do we have this unholy alliance between government and the insurance companies where they're still making record profits, and so long as they obey certain rules, they can set other rules like deductible levels and like copay levels that really challenge the average pocketbook. So during this debate, I'm listening to Hillary challenge her opponent. And how does she choose to do it? She does factual thing after factual thing after factual thing. 100% true. She said that he wants to put in place something that would dismantle Obamacare. True. In other words, the way things are set up with this alliance, basically between government and these insurance companies, these pools, then this is what Hillary envisioned many, many years ago. Actually, this was her solution to the healthcare crisis, which is why she supported it. Her point was that he wants to dismantle this. It makes it sound like he wants to reverse course and go back to the old system. You see, that's the magic of lying by saying only true things. She was very, very careful to say only things that could be verified. But putting them together in such a way that it made it seem like her opponent only wanted to step backward and have us once again be in the nightmare we were in before. Well, frankly, we're in a worse nightmare now, money-wise. Everybody has got worse coverage that costs more. Everybody does. And there are still some 16 or 17 million people uninsured. Some say 21 million. So it's pretty ridiculous. So I was telling this to my attendees at the workshops that manipulators are very good at this. They're very good at saying things that are factually true, technically true, maybe even giving you a litany of these things. But that doesn't mean they're telling you the truth. Depending on how they put these things together and depending on the presentation, depending upon the kind of subliminal message that they want to send or the overall impression that they want to create, they could very well be lying. And this was my point. about certain character types, certain manipulative character types. I see we have a call coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and take this call. Hello and welcome to Character Matters.
Well, hello, Dr. Simon. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I was just enjoying your broadcast, especially the part about the insurance company.
Yes.
Well, I have a little something to add to that.
Okay.
You're talking about things that are happening within the insurance companies.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that's going on now, and I don't know, it's just a tidal wave, is denial of services. In the
Yeah.
past month, I've received 2 denial of services letters from my insurance company. I
Yeah.
had an attack of kidney stones in December, ended up at the emergency room.
Uh-huh.
The first thing they did was put in an IV, and then they gave me a shot of something for the pain because I was almost screaming.
Yeah.
My insurance company has denied the charge. They're claiming that those meds were self-administered.
Oh my goodness.
Now, I do not know of any ER in the country that will allow a patient to come in, whether they're a nurse or a doctor themselves, insert their own IV, and give themselves a shot of painkiller.
Yeah. And by the
Yeah.
way, let me interrupt for a second. I know very well, having passed 3 stones in my life, and having to have several removed by force, as they say. I know the kind of pain you're talking about, so I empathize with you greatly.
Well, I passed 3 of them, and after that ordeal, I decided to name them and to give out cigars.
Probably a wise choice anyway, right?
Yes, yes.
Uh,
And then the
and how
second thing,
and how about the oxalate containing foods? Do you know what they are?
go ahead.
Do you know what they are? The oxalate containing
Yes,
foods. Uh,
yes.
and are do you like I do kind of crave those foods like peanuts and cheese and spinach and things like that? Do you crave those things?
I find myself craving greens
Uh-huh. Yeah.
almost uncontrollably.
Yeah. Well, some greens, unfortunately, spinach is the worst, by the way. Some greens are very, very rich in oxalates. So even though they're good
Yes.
for you, and even the government tells us to eat those leafy greens because of all their antioxidant properties, for those of us who tend to form those rascally stones, uh,
Yes.
they are not too good for us, I'm afraid.
Well, that's, and that's a whole other subject, the conflicting information that we get. I mean, it's ridiculous. But the second thing I wanted to mention to you is I got another denial of services letter from my same insurance company. I have a home nebulizer because I've been an asthmatic since I'm a small child. I have a pulmonologist. There's never been a problem with the prescription. I use a mail order service to get my meds. And I get this notice of denial letter from my insurance company stating that they're denying the claim because the supplier, they sent them 2 separate bills, one for the medicine itself and then one for the delivery charge. And they're
Uh-huh.
claiming that they have to be on the same bill. Therefore, they've denied paying it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and to add insult to injury,
Yeah.
on the emergency room visit in December, I contacted the insurance company, and they told me that I had to get an itemized copy of my bill
Yeah.
to fight, to file the grievance. So
Mhm.
when I contacted the insurance company and tried to get an itemized copy of my bill, the person in the billing office flat out refused to give it to me.
Mm. Let me ask
Now,
you.
most
Let me ask you a question. Are you?
yes,
How do you feel about health care as a basic right these days?
I think it is a crying shame that we are the wealthiest country in the world, and we have some of the worst care systems in place right now. It's a disgrace.
Hmm.
It's a public disgrace.
Yeah.
It
And
really is. What, as a nursing home supervisor, And as a former member of the medical profession, I can tell you with certainty that you were right about the situation before Obamacare being abysmal, because the people who could least afford to pay for this health care were the people who were being forced to pay the most for it.
Yes. Yes.
And you know that, and I know that for a fact.
Yes.
However, insurance companies have taken control of medicine away from the medical community.
Yeah.
Insurance dictates medical care. That, to me, is a sin, a crime, and a shame.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how do you feel about, say, Senator Sanders' plan to simply end this nightmare altogether by having a government-run single-payer system whereby basically we all take care of each other and pool our resources and do our best to maintain our health, and for those of us who struggle with conditions that through no fault of our own, that we just that we use our tax pool to take care of each other, have a single payer, end the nightmare of the bureaucracy where doctors and hospitals and individuals have to constantly chase the dollars, et cetera, et cetera. How do you feel about that?
It sounds good on paper, but
Yeah.
in any situation, there are always going to be people who will figure out how to get around the system, take advantage of it, misuse it, because it goes back to what you and I have talked about earlier, this disconnect with the moral and spiritual values that our country was once great for. There's such a deep disconnect there. We've seen it in all things. We've seen it through our religious systems, our school system. Don't even get me started on our political system. But we have seen an almost entire disconnect from the things that once made us great.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and you know that's why this program begins and ends with the theme song that it does. Let me just mention one thing though. I am ready for a single payer, no profit, not on the reimbursement. Certainly providers have to make a living. But as far as reimbursement goes, we need to take the profit out of that. No more insurance, just health care. But here's what scares me. Senator Sanders says he wants Medicare for all. Well, I deal with Medicare too, and I don't know whether you have in the past. But if you're a provider dealing with Medicare, I have to tell you, it's a nightmare too. It's a real nightmare.
It is. I've spoken with several physicians that cannot wait to retire because they say that the nightmare is just getting worse every time they turn around. There's more rules, regulations being handed down. I guess I'm one of the few people in this entire country that read the Medicare bill when it was passed. I actually printed that thing out.
Really?
Yes, it took me over 2 inches of paper. And I read it. And the one thing that I found that absolutely appalled me was when the rules changed to mandate that only palliative care need legally be given to chronic conditions.
Yes.
In other words, if you have congestive heart failure or COPD and you have a really bad spell and you have to go to the hospital by law, that hospital or that healthcare provider is only obligated to ease your symptoms, to do nothing about making you better.
Right.
That, to me, right there, was when the bottom fell out in healthcare, because then it's open season on patients.
Yeah, yeah.
These long-term conditions are the ones that cost the most money to treat.
Right, and this is
expensive. Yes.
Yeah, and this is where I say again, and perhaps you're reinforcing my point. I'll see if you agree with this. This is where I say that we cannot legislate our way out of this problem, because it all comes down to character. It all comes down to the character of that person who's going to make the call to basically, for the sake of a few bucks, allow someone to move to an entirely different level of care as opposed to providing what they really need. You cannot legislate these things.
That's right. This is like saying that you can take the Bible and rewrite it so that it says exactly what you want it to say. You see, there's no hanging on to the reality of truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
You rewrite it. And that Medicare bill was, to me, basically, it was nothing more than a blueprint for the euthanization of the baby boomer generation, of whom I am a proud member.
Have you been paying attention to the debate between Hillary and Bernie on this issue?
Yes, and it's been real interesting.
Yeah.
I'll just say that, because politics is something I don't really discuss. I listen, I form my own opinion, and I pray a lot.
Uh-huh.
Because you do not know who the person really is. People are such good actors. They'll say anything to get elected.
Well, that was my point. That was my point to the audience. And I hate to interrupt you again, but I want to make this point. My point was not just that Hillary used this common tactic of stating these true things, but trying to create an impression, a false impression, which is still, in my book, lying. It wasn't just that she was doing that. It's that she was able to do that without any apparent compunction, without any sign of distress. That's what really unnerves me about what I'm seeing in the character of folks today. They don't give it a second thought. It doesn't seem to bother them. There was a time that I can remember this. I can remember a time when people would be ashamed of themselves for behaving in certain ways. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. I'll give you a perfect example. We challenged my grandson. We had a little game going. My son challenged my grandson. We were out having lunch at an eatery today. Challenged him to deliberately say something false, and he could not contain himself. He gave himself away. His facial expression, he couldn't do it. He couldn't bring himself to say a falsehood without us knowing that he was doing so, because he felt so bad, and he couldn't hide it.
Well, and here's the thing, and this is a point that I'm sure you're well aware of. You know, certain of us, we have an ability to read micro expressions on people's faces.
Uh-huh.
Now that's a gift, I think. What really disturbed me about Hillary was that there was absolutely not a flicker of a micro expression.
Thank you. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for there to be that flicker, there has to be some inner unnervingness, some inner unnervedness, some inner anxiety, some conflict raging inside to create that flicker, and you didn't see it.
There was none, was there? There was none, absolutely none.
Yeah.
Her face was like plastic.
Yeah, could pass a lie detector test.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Exactly.
And you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm seeing this more and more, not just in the politicians, not just in our local and state leaders. I mean, we're talking all three levels of government, but I'm seeing this day to day in ordinary people.
Yes.
That terrifies me.
Yeah. Can we say Scott Peterson, who dumped his wife's body in San Francisco Bay and is in front of the cameras, acting like, he's worried about it, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, more and more people are able to do this. This is the crisis we're in. Yeah.
We are. We really are in a major crisis. And I don't know how they can do it, because I can't get inside that mindset.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't have that ability to do that. And I'm glad, because if I had the ability to get inside that mindset, then I could probably do it.
Thank you.
I'm grateful that I can't.
Thank you for sharing some thoughts on the healthcare issue. I really appreciate that. And I will say a prayer that you have had your last kidney stone.
Well, Dr. Simon, I've put you on my personal and permanent prayer list, and I will add that as a codicil.
Thank you
to
so
my
much.
prayers for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. They are not fun, are they?
Well, I've had children and I've had kidney stones, and believe me, I'll have another child anytime.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear.
It No, it's absolutely true, because with childbirth, you have a brief respite between the contractions, right?
Yes.
But you know yourself, when you're trying to pass a kidney stone,
Oh, no.
the contractions is just one constant.
Yeah.
And the waves of pain, they build. I was clenching my husband's hand, and he had to gently tell me to let go because his fingertips had turned purple.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a death grip on his hand.
Well, we're praying that you've had your last stone. Okay.
And I'm for you.
All right. Thank you for
Thank
calling
you.
in. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, I really do. I really do feel for her. I have to tell you, folks, if you have ever had a kidney stone or passed one, it is an unbelievable ordeal. And I've been through it. Like I said, I've passed multiple stones, but I've been through the ordeal on 3 separate occasions. And then I've also had some occasions where they had to go in and remove stones because they wouldn't pass. And they are just not fun. And I'm as careful as I can be with my diet. But when your metabolism is such and your body just forms them, sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. So I really do appreciate the prayers, believe me. And we're getting close to the end of the program here, I want to say once again, I want to invite you to take advantage of the blog and its many articles. I'll be back in action this week, so there will be a regular blog post coming up this Friday. There will also be a blog post on the counseling resource site. So go to either my personal blog at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. Or my website, drgeorgesimon.com. That's drgeorge simon.com. Or the blog Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life at www.counseling with 2 L's, counselingresource.com. And avail yourselves of my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, and Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age. And for all of you listening out there in the Christian faith community, my book, The Judas Syndrome. And by the way, some news on that. Soon there will be an upgrade to my blog. It'll be a multi-site blog, and we'll be doing some blogging on the material for Judas Syndrome. And that'll be a great chance for those of you in the Christian faith community to have an opportunity to comment on the articles that I'll be posting. And I think you'll find it exciting, and I hope that you will keep up with me as I give you more information about that. And also another book coming out in the end of March or early April. How did we end up here? That will be coming out, and that is basically a statement about how we got here as a society, as well as how folks end up in those relationships that have proven to be so dysfunctional that they make them kind of want to pull their hair out. So thanks again for joining me on another edition of Character Matters. I hope you'll tune in again next week at the same time, 7 p.m. Sunday evenings, for another edition of Character Matters, where we'll talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time. Remember, our greatness depends on character. We all need to do our part to restore it. We'll be great again as a country when we're great again as a people, great in character. So until then, I'm Dr. George Simon. Tune in again next week.